You are listening to the Enormocast.
So what's your tired excuse for not wearing a helmet? Too heavy? Not anymore. Too hot? You literally wear a beanie in your sweltering climbing gym, bro. Too dumb looking? Well, you might have me there. But you know what else is dumb looking? A cracked skull. So yes, 25 years ago, all those excuses might have had legs. But Black Diamond's modern helmets shut them all down. The Vapor, Vector, or Vision are all great lightweight foam helmets that do what modern helmets should do, which is make you forget they're even on your head. And if foam feels too flimsy, check out the more traditional full plastic and suspension half dome. No matter which you choose, they all sport sleek headlamp clips, UIA-rated protection, and a price point 1/1000th of your average head trauma surgery. But listen, the royal we at the Enormocast really just want you to consider getting your freaking brain wrapped in a helmet. And while we'd love for you to support Black Diamond, frankly, there's a lot of great lightweight helmets out there, and it's time to reconsider your prejudices for the old brain bucket, even when you're, quote, just sport climbing. So support the Enormocast by checking out Black Diamond's line of modern helmets at blackdiamondequipment.com or your local shop. But if you don't find what you like there, look around. And please, get your brain behind some foam and plastic before it's too late. The truth is that climbers live their lives off the rocks in approach shoes. Part comfort, part performance, part signaling to that lady across from you on the bus that you and the crazy free solo guy are essentially cut from the same cloth. That's right, lady on your way to Target. Don't you know I'm loco? That's why Sportiva has invented the most versatile approach shoe yet, the TX Guide. Sprinkling in DNA from their acclaimed running shoes, brilliant climbing shoes, and the legendary TX line, the TX Guide for women and men can run to the climb, bash down the climb, all in time to climb into your stool on the patio of your local brew pub. So if you want to walk both streets and trails like a golden climbing deity, check out all of Sportiva's approach shoes at sportiva.com or your favorite local shop.
We gotta get Listen, where are you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Normo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
it's
yeah, big place that side of town. That's a big place. You sold it out.
20,000 seats.
You
really should.
Look, you better get up there before you panic. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed climbing with you. We'll make it. I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Bad weather. Now or later, anytime for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, with support from Maxim Ropes.
And the fine folks at La Sportiva. And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enormo at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is August 30th, about 10 o'clock here in Central Time in the great state of Wisconsin. At the bunker up in the Northwoods, my annual pilgrimage to the old country. And this is episode 204 of the Enormocast, a conversation with boulderer, doctor, ninja, what else? Cancer survivor, and president of the Southern Maryland Youth Foreign Film and Cuisine Club, Ms. Favia Dubyk. And if you don't know who Favia is, you're going to find out. And your Instagram is not complete without following Favia Feline on Instagram to see her do pull-ups with cats attached to her. Cat-ups, as I like to call them. Amazing stuff over there. Amazing woman. That's who we talked to today, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Yeah, we traveled across the Great Plains, the family and I, including the normal child, in the new camper, the one I talked about, I think, last time. Finished it to a certain extent, got it going enough to make it the 1,000 or so miles here to Wisconsin in the time of pestilence, camping, trying to avoid contact, that sort of thing, to arrive at my parents' house here up in the North Woods. Managed a few pitches in Spearfish, South Dakota, as well as a single pitch of 5.7 in the Black Hills. Amazing climbing area, climbing zone, the Black Hills of South Dakota, that zone. Would love to get back, but we were just passing through, managed to get a couple few pitches in the heat and the haze from the fires in Colorado and elsewhere. And now we're up here in Wisconsin. And every year I put one of these together up here on the trip, and it's quite a daunting task because this has to be one of the most internetless places on the face of the earth, actually. It's harder to find good internet than it is to find a Joe Biden yard sign up here. My parents are running satellite because they're kind of off the grid out here. The library couldn't hook me up really. They're closed and, just pumping a couple bars out the window. And it's been a little tricky. It's always a little tricky. So don't take your good internet for granted, people. That's what I'm saying. But really, people come up here, to lead the good life, to relax, to get away from it all. So it's always funny that I end up, stressing about internet and like peering into windows of closed coffee shops and libraries and things, trying to suck a couple G's out of the sky to get the Normacast done. But here we are. If it's coming into your ears, that means I figured it out. So let's get on to the interview with Favia Dubyk. I sort of met Favia by doing an interview with her over at the other podcast, The Run Out, that I do with Andrew Bisharat. And I also had kind of wandered across her Instagram, which I tout heavily as a place for uplifting videos of a woman doing one-arm pull-ups with cats. Is my favorite thing that she does over there. There's also the normal bouldering and lifestyle stuff. But my favorite thing she does is, do sort of pike position pull-ups with cats in her lap, because she's got 5 cats of all different weights and sizes that she works out with, which is hilarious. And that gets us to this interview. This interview covers a lot of heavy ground because Favia led an amazing life as a youth, overcoming a bunch of hurdles to end up at Harvard and to end up as a doctor. But one of the biggest hurdles she overcame was she was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma at 24 and had a fight for her life on her hands, and regaining her strength, both mentally and physically, to be able to go on to have a career as a doctor, have a healthy relationship, and to be a climber. So that's kind of the meat of this interview, as well as just talking to a woman who has sort of boundless energy that I stand in awe of. So as I left the fires in Colorado and arrived here into Wisconsin, only to have once again terrible civil unrest going on just a few hours south of here and dominating the news while I've been here. Going back and editing this interview was basically a breath of fresh air. I just got it a couple weeks ago, but I just smiled all the way through listening to it again. And sometimes, the editing of an interview that I already did that has no more surprises because I've already heard it once at least when we did it, is sometimes a chore. But in this case, I just sat back and enjoyed it once again. Enjoyed listening to Favia tell her stories, enjoyed listening to her laugh, which blew the levels on the microphones a number of times, which is, always good. And we talked about some hard times for Favia, but always with a laugh and a joke. And just a really uplifting, incredible interview from Favia Dubyk. So I hope you enjoy this one. I hope you enjoy getting to know Favia if you've never heard of her or are learning more about her. And again, make sure and follow what she does, at least on Instagram. But she's kind of all over the place. She's definitely contributing to the community out there, and someone that you want to run into out at the Crag. In this time of pestilence, Do you want to reach out to your friends, loved ones, and climbing partners with more than an anxious DM sent while slurping a soggy bowl of Captain Crunch at 2 a.m.? Then why don't you hit up friend of the show, Peter W. Gilroy, and send those socially distanced friends a climbing or mountain-inspired piece of handcrafted jewelry. Or maybe one of his famous titanium tricked-out trucker caps. Yes, titanium on a hat, people. Unique jewelry, hats, money clips, belt buckles, and more amazing accessories can be had with a discount and the bonus of supporting the Enormocast. So why don't you cheer up your pals with a nice surprise that won't glitch and freeze in the middle like an annoying Zoom conversation, and go to peterwgilroy.com or splitter-designs.com to check out the wares of a great artist and also a climber just like you. And enter Enormo at checkout for the hookup. So there's no, the mystery was out of the bag on the last episode. Of course, maybe a lot of people didn't listen to that episode. I don't know, are coming here for this one. But the Enormocast has started to do remote interviews because of the obvious things that are going on with traveling and the pandemic and whatnot. I'm actually talking to Favia. She's in New Mexico. I'm up here in Colorado. We've been talking about the weather, and we're going to go ahead and get started on the interview. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about
Good.
you?
Good. Yeah. Other than we were just discussing the current events of like massive wildfires going on around us. I'm doing pretty good, actually. This is a nice place to be. So I just want to kind of reintroduce you. We talked about, I don't know, I guess it's been a couple months now, maybe a month and a half, on the other podcast. I'm doing my podcast, air quotes, the Run Out. More of a specific topic that we got into. But what happened after that show is a lot of people that listen to the Enormocast, and I got emails, saying that, well, you need to talk to Favia on the Enormocast because we just skipped over all these really tantalizing things about your life. Or we just mentioned them as if it was like, oh yeah, no big deal. You had cancer and almost died. And okay, anyway, let's move on. So there was a bunch of things that we wanted to talk about. I got some emails asking to redo this, and you've been kind enough to come back on the show, at least come back to talk to me again. And so I really appreciate that.
Well, I really enjoyed our first conversation, so I'm sure this was going to be just as great.
Yeah, and the other thing that happened is I interviewed a woman that lives down in Albuquerque as well, which also puts you back on my mind. So that was all the impetus for getting this going as a full interview. So one of the things that I think, I first sort of encountered you on Instagram, then we talked on the other show, and there's this like framing that I started to do in my mind that I kind of want to get to about just ambition and motivation and energy, frankly, that at least, the social media is a real narrow view into a person's world. Obviously, it's curated a little bit, you don't necessarily post videos of you like sitting in the closet crying your eyes out or whatever. So I don't know if that happens, but
not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Nevertheless, it's a curated view of someone's life, obviously. But then there's the growing up, there's the college sports, there's the climbing, there's the doctor, you're a doctor. There's all these things. I'm just like, this woman is ambitious, motivated, has more energy than anyone I've ever met. And then, it's also beating cancer. And there's so many things that have armed you, it seems like, to take on this world, as it were. So can we go back to who you were sort of growing up? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about where that motivation, that energy was instilled to you, or you found it in yourself naturally, or what? If we can kind of think about that as a place to start.
Yeah. So I like to say that I grew up below the Mason-Dixon line, born in North Carolina, then moved to Tennessee, and then moved to very, very rural Southern Maryland, a county that most people don't know exists and covered 3 sides by water, St. Mary's County. There was no rocks, no rock climbing gym, hardly any sports. You had your choice of gymnastics and softball, pretty much. were your two choices. And I had started doing gymnastics when I was young, so I just kind of continued that when I moved to Maryland. And then when I started high school, I joined the track team. And I shifted out of gymnastics into being a sprinter, 100 meter, 200 meter, and the associated relays. And then I continued that on in college and ran Division I track at Harvard. But during all this time, I actually had I was a little strange. I like to start clubs. And so my friends and I had a laminator, and we would start various clubs and laminate cards. So we had the Foreign Film Club, and we had our little card. And I had a little show called In the Know with Favia Dubyk. That was my maiden name. And it showed on the local public channel. And so my poor parents, they were like, can you just sit on the couch one weekend? Like, because like at one point in time, I told them I wanted to start a one woman band, and we lived in the middle of nowhere. So to get these instruments, to get the accordion and the harmonica holder and the drum set, we had to drive all over Maryland to pick up these pieces. And that was pretty much my whole time growing up, coming up with ideas that just took a lot of work. And my parents were very, very supportive. And luckily, they were able to support me, financially with these crazy ideas that I had. But
how much does a laminator cost? I don't even know.
A small laminator is not very much. Probably it was like $30 or $40.
Okay,
but I
cool.
mean, it was just to laminate a card that said that I was the president of a club I started
Okay.
with my two friends.
Nice.
So pretty much I've had a lot of energy my whole life, and it hasn't left me yet. I kind of thought I might slow down in my 30s, but I seem to have even more energy now.
Yeah, the fitness probably has something to do with that, but we'll get to that later. So, you kind of talked about your parents being supportive, but, again, kind of sort of getting to the roots of this. Are you sort of an anomaly in your family? Are you, or is it something, that was fostered by them? Particularly, you have the Foreign Film Club. Like, I mean, that kind of thing, however old you were, 10, 12,
yeah,
20, 25. I don't know when you were laminating these club cards, but that's the kind of thing that like comes from somewhere, whether it's a teacher maybe, or whether it's a parent or a grandparent. Where was an idea that, foreign films were cool, and as a club, you would delve into those, or did it go no further than the card?
Oh, no. We met once a month, and you had to cook food based on the country of origin of the film. So we were very serious about it.
I mean, you gotta help me out here, because, it's like, and I guess I'm gonna, I'm delving into sort of like stereotyping, but, rural Maryland, like, where does that come from? Where does it bubble up? So
I think it's a mixture. Like, definitely part of me is just odd, but my mom, we moved from North Carolina to Tennessee because she became a graduate student. She got a PhD in neuroscience. And we lived in dorms, actually, for adults who had families. Mm-hmm. So like elementary school, 2nd through 5th grade, all my neighbors were from around the world. So from Malaysia, Ecuador, China, different parts of the U.S., black, white, different races. So I think that definitely had an important part of me kind of recognizing different cultures from a young age. Mm-hmm. And then my mom was the first to go to college on her side, and my stepdad, he was the first to go to college on his side. So they were, very supportive of going to, college and whatever. They might not know about foreign films, but they're like, that sounds interesting. We'll do whatever we can to get you all the foreign films you want to watch, and whatever random foods you need to cook to go with those movies. So I think it was definitely a combination of like their upbringing of me and then just kind of my drive to learn about anything and everything I possibly could.
Yeah, so good. Now, that we're getting to the roots. That's kind of what I was talking about, because that explains a ton of where these sorts of things come from. Sometimes they do bubble up, regardless, and a kid just casts themselves out. But usually there's seeds being dropped here and there. I hope that they screened those films, because like handing foreign films over to little girls to watch.
I saw a lot. I saw a lot.
I was gonna say they don't. Yeah, the old the Belgian and the French. They don't have quite the mores that we do.
Nope, I definitely saw a lot of things.
Okay, all right. Well, that may be part of your whole education, I guess. That is so funny. Like, oh, here's some whatever. Like I'm trying to think of that. There's a woman that's on my mind that I can't remember her name. It's a really famous French actress and very, very willing to expose herself. Anyhow, fantastic. So the college track was a super important track to you. I mean, what kind of what kind of schooling were you getting in a place like southern these counties and stuff like that to keep you on this track to college?
Well, not very good schooling, I'll have to say. Pretty much when I was 5 years old, I asked my mom what was the best school in the country. And she said Harvard or Yale. And I said, well, that's where I'm going to go. So I had picked it out when I was 5, and I just kind of followed a path on my own to get there, because my high school, if you were in the gifted classes, they sent you to the state school. So actually my guidance counselors were like, don't waste your time applying to Harvard, Yale, any Ivy Leagues. You're going to University of Maryland. Like, that's just where you go. And I was like, no, I'm going to Harvard or Yale or Princeton. Back then, and by the time I got to high school, I was really set on UPenn. I loved UPenn. But this wasn't something that was fostered by my school,
Right.
Or even they weren't even trying to help me at all. Our AP classes did not prepare me at all for college. But I did take some classes at the local college where my stepdad worked, and that helped me a lot, actually. So, but me going to Harvard was pretty much me deciding when I was 5 and not letting anyone tell me no.
That's awesome. That's unreal. I hear about like so much almost like criminal negligence from frickin' high school counselors. And I don't care across the sort of economic spectrum. I just hear so much of this, like, oh, what are your dreams? No. Your dreams have to be put aside because here's what it's like. It's so insane. I hear the other one too. And I think I was in between. I don't really remember my counselor doing anything, but I hear both, like counselors like really going to the bat for kids and getting them what they need. But the other way around seems to happen so often. Just like, get back in line, kid. Get back in line and do what you're supposed to do.
I'll have to add that our counselors weren't helpful, but I did have a handful of teachers who were extremely supportive.
Awesome.
And they would, they wrote me great letters, and they tried their darndest to get me to where I want to go. So my school wasn't maybe the best, but there were some gleaming flowers among some of the people who were also trying to hold you back.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty key, and it can be, such a life difference. I guess when people talk sort of wistfully about teaching in general, that's what they're talking about, is trying to be that person that puts a kid, on a path to where you're ended up today on the Enormocast. Who could have, like, how could they have predicted that? I know this is kind of a culmination of like all the stuff for you, so you don't have to hide it.
I told my mom when I was 3.
Yeah, I'm going to do the Enormocast. There's this thing that's going to be invented in the future called podcasting, and of those, 10,000 things. Oh, and the internet. And of these 10,000 things, a podcast, this is the one I'm going to do because I've been in a time machine. Anyway, we digress completely. Okay, cool. That's like that's kind of what I'm trying to get at again. I've created this narrative around this life of sort of, it sounds to me like there were hurdles, but you had such this like foundation, as well as innate drive that the hurdles, didn't sort of keep you down.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk a little bit more then. You ended up where, in terms of pursuing, what I've seen of your collegiate sports, because that's been a big part of what I've looked at and found out about you on the internet.
Yeah, I'll have to say that running track at Harvard definitely shaped pretty much the rest of my life.
Oh, wait. Sorry. I got to go back because you were going to go to UPenn, but you ended up at Harvard anyway. So what was the path? Let's just finish the story.
Yeah.
The 5-year-old arc to Harvard.
So I was either set on going to UPenn or Princeton in high school.
Okay.
And then I was applying to all the schools. And I had a very limited view of what Ivy League schools were. So I only knew of like the main 4. And I wasn't going to apply to Harvard at all. And because I was like, I'm a Princeton girl, UPenn girl, I'm not going to Harvard. And my mom's like, no, you said you want to go to Harvard, so you're applying. And she made me apply, and I told her as a true 16-year-old, well, fine, but I won't try. Like, what was my problem?
And your mother was like, oh, she'll try. She can't help herself. Like, yeah. We've burned out 4 laminators in the last 2 years. Like,
so I'm so happy that she made me do that. And I ended up getting into Princeton and Harvard and UPenn. I did not get into Yale, which I was a little bummed about because I was a big fan of Gilmore Girls and Rory went to Yale. But after I got my acceptance letters, went to go visit them, and I just didn't jive with UPenn or Princeton. And when I visited Harvard, I was like, this is the place for me. And so I totally switched, and very happy I did.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go back to running then.
For the track team, I actually wasn't recruited by Harvard for the track team. I was heavily recruited by UPenn and Princeton, which I think is part of the reason why I was really kind of excited to go there. And the UPenn track team was really good then. But I just walked on to the Harvard track team. I was like, I've been recruited by all your competitors. Here I am.
Yeah. You guys lucked out.
That's how I joined the track team. And I actually was really ill my first year of college. Mm-hmm. I had a giant raging infection from my sinuses down to my teeth. Like my whole side was just awfully infected. So I actually quit the track team for like an hour. I sent an email to my coach and said, I'm just too sick. I can't run track. And he said, no, see you at 3. And so then I went, and I'm just so happy because that definitely, it shaped me forever, because being pre-med and doing environmental science and public policy, which had a lot of class requirements, plus doing 20 plus hours of track team, taught me how to manage my time efficiently. And I've been using those lessons I learned as like a 19-year-old to this day.
Yeah. And so you managed to keep running with this sinus infection. Was that sort of a precursor of what was to come?
I guess. I kind of been sickly my whole life. So I've been having like infections since I was about 7. Okay. Bad allergies on allergy shots. So this was definitely the worst I'd ever had, and it ended up requiring multiple surgeries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I had surgery during my first year of college, and it helped a ton, and which made the rest of my, running career a lot easier.
All right, so you're at Harvard. There, that wasn't intentional. I don't do a Boston accent, but arriving there, you had some designs on a degree, or was your direction kind of decided later after you were there for a bit?
So I definitely went in with an idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to study chemistry. I don't remember why, but that's
you just decided when you were 6.
Yeah, I just went into chemistry, and we didn't have majors at Harvard. We have concentrations. So we had a concentration fair, and you went around and talked to people in the different concentrations, and they told you the requirements. And I learned that you needed upper level physics and upper level calculus to do a chemistry major. Mm-hmm. And physics and calculus are not my strong points. They're awful at them. So I remember calling my mom and being like, I can't be a chemist. But being the, a little bit of a nerd I was, starting in 5th grade, I had been doing science fair projects, and a lot of them had been on environmental science. And so I decided, well, I seem to kind of drift towards environmental science. I might as well try that for a concentration. It's one you have to apply to get into, so I got accepted. It's kind of funny now that I chose that because I didn't spend any time outside. I've never been on a hike. I didn't want to go into the forest. I recognize the importance of saving the environment, but I always tell people I want to do it from my air-conditioned office. And then fast forward to now where I spend all my time outside. Right.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to get into that that shift as well. So I kind of lost the plot there. Then what was
So I did environmental science and public policy. I just shifted completely from the science fairs. So my plan was to always go to med school. Okay. So cool. Even if because you can't major in pre-med. So you had to pick something outside of that, and then you just did the pre-med classes on top of whatever concentration you picked. Okay. I didn't really know how exactly I would integrate environmental science and public policy into being a doctor, and I haven't. So, but I enjoyed it.
Right on. So did you have motivations in terms of this public policy thing? Were you a person that thought, oh, I'm gonna change the world, or did it seem like just a good career path? What kind of motivations were behind that?
Pretty much in Maryland, there was increased arsenic in the water in one of these neighborhoods, and I just didn't really see it as I changed the world. I wanted to change small communities by improving drinking water. That was pretty much what I wanted to do. No big picture plans. And honestly, I like public policy because I don't like writing full sentences.
Wait, what does that mean? You got to explain that.
So when you write policy, you start off with a sentence, and then the rest are mostly bullet points. Okay. To get your point across really quickly and concisely to the, congressman or whoever you're writing. And so I was like, I like that. I'm not much of a flowery language type person. Sure. I like direct.
Yeah. What are you doing now?
It's completely unrelated pretty much. Right. I'm a hematopathologist. So I diagnose leukemias, lymphomas, and any diseases that arise in the blood and lymph nodes. Okay.
And you're saying you don't feel like that has a crossover yet, but are you? You're obviously helping people, which helps communities. So you have reached a certain amount of your goal. Do you imagine? Have you gained any sort of ideas of your future that may integrate both?
No, pretty much, I guess for the environmental science part of my life, that kind of just goes with climbing part. keeping everything, like, like leave no trace, just trying to have the best habits I possibly can.
Right.
So that's kind of where it comes in. But right now, I'm mostly focused on pathology for my medical career.
Right. Okay, cool. All right. So, we're just kind of like going greatest hits here. And it's an impressive path. It's an impressive path. It's full of determination. All these things are extremely motivating. But at some point, and this probably has led to your current career choice. You were diagnosed with cancer, and it became extraordinarily serious. So let's talk a little bit about that and kind of put that into yet another, Favia rises to the challenge. To be honest with you, I mean, the challenge of losing your life at the end of this thing if you didn't fight hard enough.
Yeah, that was, I guess in retrospect, I probably started getting sick in 2011 during my second year of medical school.
Mm-hmm.
But since I'd been sickly kind of my whole life, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, well, I just get infections. That's just what I deal with. But now I can kind of see that those infections weren't my typical infections.
Sure.
And that they were a little worse. But I started.
That's always been kind of like a question, I've had it answered in different ways and I think it's a real issue of like, how do you know when this is one thing and not the other, and especially with you, if you were just used to that sort of thing. I'm not someone who does. So I think if I did start getting, repeated infections, it would be a red flag right away. But plenty of people, have issues that even just allergies, can mask like serious stuff. So it's good that you sort of brought that up, because I mean, it's just like so many stories where someone's like, yeah, I just thought I was sick. And then it turned out I was really, one foot in the grave sick.
It's funny that you mentioned allergies, because that's what they were diagnosing me with for a while. And I was like, I already have allergies. This is different than allergies.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you, when you can't swallow and you can't breathe, then that's a red flag.
Okay.
You should go seek help.
Sure.
So it was at that point, probably now 7 months into not feeling good, I was unable to breathe. If I lifted my arms up, like trying to climb, I had no oxygen flow whatsoever. And I couldn't swallow, solid food, and I struggled with liquids. So, I kind of left the primary care doctors I was seeing and saw some commercials for Cleveland Clinic next day appointments. And I made like 1 billion specialist appointments. I was like, someone will figure out what is wrong with me, because this is not right.
Mm-hmm.
I was having problems seeing spots, like it was getting bad. And then they did an x-ray, which I had been requesting for months, but had been denied. They saw this 13 centimeter mass in my chest.
Okay.
And I'm a small person, so 13 cm pretty much comprises my entire chest, my entire torso. And that's why I couldn't breathe or eat, because the mass was pressing on my esophagus and my trachea, so I couldn't get anything in. So it was in a lymph node. So it started in one small lymph node that should never be more than 1 cm, pretty much. And so it was like 13 times the size that it should have been. So it just grew rapidly. It's one of those cancers that isn't what we call indolent. It's fast growing, which can be bad and good, because some of the fast growing cancers means like fast growing, you're dead. But sometimes the fast growing cancers really, really respond to chemotherapy.
Okay.
They're really chemosensitive. And so if you get your treatment, then you have a pretty good prognosis. So luckily the lymphoma I had is very sensitive to chemotherapy.
We've been talking about this like indomitable girl, right? That grew up just, pushing aside any barrier she ever needed. Let me see if I can get behind the armor of positivity, if you will. And I mean, so you finally get this x-ray. You've obviously been worried and knowing something was up. Like, what happened to Favia that saw this X-ray? And I mean, did you do the raw I'm gonna win thing, or did you end up, in the closet crying in a ball or anything like that? What did it look like to find something like shocking as that out? Especially someone who's so fit and just, in terms of physical, you're very much an energetic physical person as well.
Well, there was a spectrum of Favias during this time.
Sure.
So when I started, I luckily, thank goodness, had like medical school knowledge of the lymphoma I had, Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very happy I didn't know what I know now.
Okay.
But then in med school, because they really kind of like give you a broad education. Mm-hmm. So like the highlights, this disease and the prognosis and the treatment, but you don't know all the little like small parts. So I knew classical Hodgkin lymphoma, good prognosis. So I heard, I have a mediastinal mass, a chest mass. The differential is a few different types of cancers. And most of them had a good prognosis from my medical school understanding. So when I saw it, I of course was upset and devastated, but the thought of dying I didn't really process it.
Okay.
Because from my knowledge, one of these chest lymphoma or cancers, you get treatment and you're okay. Like it was very naive, very, very naive. And so I went to the hospital to get the biopsy, which they told me it'd be very simple. You go in, we take a little piece of the cancer out, you get a diagnosis. Within a week, you'll start treatment. Bam. I go in, get the first biopsy. I have horrible allergic reactions to various medications they give me. I get a syndrome called SVC syndrome, superior vena cava syndrome, which is a clotting disease where you have clots in very large vessels in your upper body. So I look like the Michelin Man. And I went to the ED. I was like, I'm huge, I'm swollen. And they told me I had this syndrome. So I Googled it, and Wikipedia told me over 90% of people die with it. So that was probably the first time I thought like, oh crap, yeah, I might not survive this. And that biopsy came back as dead tissue. And so then I got a second biopsy, and from that one, my lungs collapsed and fluid went all around my heart. And then my heart was having trouble working because of all the fluid, and I was having trouble breathing because my lungs were covered in fluid and, were collapsed. And that biopsy came back as dead tissue. And so it's like every step of the way, trying to get this diagnosis, became very difficult and life-threatening. And so then I started to get like slightly more worried, but also my brain functioning was very low. Like I was so sick, I couldn't quite understand what was happening. So I still wasn't as concerned as I should have been. And so then my mom's like, well, Favia, you should try to freeze your eggs before this happens. And the doctor said, oh no, like that takes weeks. You'll be dead. Like you don't have that long to live if you don't get treatment.
Right.
So that was kind of the first time I had understood the seriousness of this. I was like, oh, I really need chemotherapy. So then I had my third biopsy, and that one finally came back, as Hodgkin's lymphoma. And again, my naivety came back. I was like, oh, well, chemo, you're good to go. So I get my first round of chemo, and it's actually okay. Like I actually have a picture of me. I'm smiling, like I'm getting my chemotherapy, and I'm like happy, and like all my friends are around me.
That doesn't surprise anyone who's listened this far on this podcast. It's like, obvious, like they're pumping poison through my veins. Thumbs up.
Yeah. So that was how it started. But let me tell you that chemo slowly kills your soul.
Okay.
So
even yours.
Even mine.
Okay.
So by October, I was just a hollow form of myself. Mm-hmm. I actually had a day, I can't remember because I actually have amnesia. Chemo brain is a thing. So I've lost a lot of time even before chemo. And then a couple years afterwards, so there's like 3 years of my life that's all foggy. But in October, I remember telling Brian, my then boyfriend, my then recent boyfriend, my now husband, like, this is my death day. Like, the Favia Merritt that you know is dead. I am a completely different person now, a new person. I don't know who that old Favia was. I'm not her. She's gone. So that was about 2 months, I guess, 2 months into treatment. I declared myself dead. And then probably another 2 months into treatment, I was just begging Brian to just kill me. I was like, just end my suffering. I can't like take it anymore. This is too horrible. Because pretty much my whole life was on Mondays, I would get chemo. Monday through Thursday, I would be passed out. So I wouldn't do anything. I don't even know how I really survived because I wasn't eating or drinking. Thursday, I would wake up in tremendous, horrible pain. And I would be vomiting buckets of black sludge. And then that would last for like another week. And then Saturday would come, the following Saturday, and I'd start feeling better. But then on Monday, I would have chemo again. And so that was my life, like Monday through Thursday, sleep. Thursday, wake up, wish I would be asleep, vomit, and then repeat. And it just became too much because, as you mentioned, my whole life I was an athlete, and that is how I had gained all my self-confidence, and that's how I saw myself. And now I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't open the fridge door. I had to be carried sometimes on a bathroom schedule because I couldn't walk. So like it was definitely a very, very hard time. I wouldn't say filled with tears just because I was too sick to cry.
Jeez,
but I was not myself at all for those 6 months. And then when I finally got to the end of chemo, I kind of thought like, oh, I'm done. Once you finish chemo, you jump back to who you were. But that wasn't the case. After you're done with chemo, your brain starts to work again, and you can finally understand what you've been through the past 6 to 8 months. Mm-hmm. And you can actually kind of like see yourself in the mirror. You're processing. And that was when the tears came. I was really, really devastated to finally understand what had happened over the past almost a year of my life. That was probably the lowest part. Not crying in the closet, but crying on like the streets. Brian and I went on a vacation, and I would just have random bouts of just like being upset. So he was very patient with me during this time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you weren't married there. You were boyfriend, girlfriend at that time still?
Yeah,
or had you gotten married?
No, we had met just before I got sick. So like I moved in with him about 4 months into the relationship when I started chemo.
Wow. Of course you got married then. I mean, to go through that wow, that's incredible. That's a story in and of itself that maybe Brian has to tell.
Yeah, he had a lot more
it's
details
incredible. Yeah.
about this time. And yeah, so we've been through the hard part in the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So we're like, yeah, we can handle whatever life brings us.
Yeah, I mean, you're on easy street as far as a relationship is concerned. That's outstanding. What a guy. I'll tell you that right now. Not everybody could have handled that themselves, to be honest. So, I mean, certainly would have reason to leave, someone that they just met like that. So.
Yep. And he had to give me my shot. I was on shots, man. He like twice a day, and he's not, in the medical field. So he had to learn all these things, on the fly. So it was very impressive.
Yeah. Well, it's also impressive. It's like, you could tell people like, you think you've got game. I hooked this guy. This is like, then I put him through all this and he stuck around. Like, that's how much game I have, like, that's incredible. So good on him. And, yeah. So at this point, were you climbing at this point? Had you started climbing before? Not during. I'm saying, had you discovered it yet?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I had discovered. I've been climbing for about a year and a half.
Okay, it sounds interesting. So what you talked about, like going solo is to wanting to be put out of your misery, literally. This idea of a former self dying, which is an interesting concept and what it maybe did for you psychologically. But what were your glimpses of, like, this is how I keep going during this thing? I mean, what were you thinking about? What were the moments that said, no, I got to keep going? Or was it just you were on autopilot?
It was a mixture. Because Brian wouldn't let me die, and he was the one feeding me, giving my medicines.
Right.
So I didn't have too much of a choice in that. But also, I guess he was kind of, my first like serious boyfriend, and I was really excited to have, to possibly, form a life and get married. Because as a girl, I always kind of had those dreams, and so that kind of really kept me going. Because I would have liked to dream about climbing, but at that point, my pecs had both been cut. I couldn't walk. The fridge was too much for me to open. So
wait. Your pecs had been cut to get the mass out.
So the mass is still there.
Okay.
But to get the biopsy out, and it was so big, they cut both sides of my chest. So I have, the chest tattoo I have is actually covering multiple scars from different surgeries. And so it's just both pecs just sliced open. So dreaming about climbing seemed a little far-fetched at that point in time.
Sure.
Because I was like, I just want to be able to feed myself. I want to be able to hold a fork, use a knife, and walk.
Well, last time we talked, I joked about how motivating. Well, I wasn't joking actually, but we laughed about how motivating your Instagram was to me because of how terrible I am at hanging from one arm. But now you just put another, like, you just like stab me again, because it's like, not only can you do that like with a plum, but you both your pecs were cut off or cut from your body one time, and like you still can do it. My pecs have never been cut, and I still can't hang from one arm with it bent. So this is just outstanding. Like, I mean, and not to make light of it, but of course, one way to deal with this is to laugh about it, obviously. But yeah, it's just like an incredible thing to have emerged from that. When did you sort of cross over the hump to a place where you're like, okay, I actually am getting better, I think, and I'm confident in this idea that I'm now getting better. I'm now building again and not being destroyed.
Those are two very different humps.
Okay.
So after I finish chemo, that you have to wait a bit before they take out. They give you a device called a port, and that's what you receive your chemo in. And so you have to wait a time period to make sure the cancer doesn't immediately return before your port comes out. But the port was the reason I couldn't walk, because the port was in my leg. So it was during that period where I kind of was recovering from the chemo, but I still was waiting to get the port out, that I was like, I need to do something with my emotions, because I was feeling very angry that I had to deal with this. So I was like, why do I have to do this? So I decided to take that anger to the boxing gym. And I never boxed a day in my life, but I watched a lot of Rocky. I'm a big Rocky fan. So pretty much like the day after I had my surgery to remove my port, probably about a month after I finished chemo, I walked into a boxing gym with stitches in my leg. And I was like, hobbling, dragging my leg. I was like, I want to fight. And they were like, you can barely stand.
You're like, you've never met me. Let's just do this. Let's get in the ring there, pal. You don't know who I am.
But they were, it was a Cleveland boxing gym. They were so understanding. And, they said, okay. They actually, like, even though I looked so pathetic, they didn't say I looked pathetic. They just said, okay, we will train you. No questions asked. And just them recognizing me kind of as a human and not kind of as a sickly person
Right.
really started to make me feel better. And so I got personal training there from the owner. And I mean, he didn't let me in the ring clearly, but we started off with basics, just trying to get my basic strength back. And a couple months into that, and the personal lessons they weren't based on time. They were based on when he thought you were done. So whenever he saw that I was too tired, he said, okay, you're done for the day, see you in a couple of days. Mm-hmm. And then as I went, the lessons got longer, longer, and longer to the point where he said, you know what, you're actually looking kind of strong now. You were so bad at the beginning.
Right.
I was like, I'm glad you didn't tell me that. So I did a few months of that, and probably about 6 to 7 months after I finished chemo, I decided that I was going to return to the climbing gym. Mm-hmm. So I had a little confidence back from the boxing gym.
Sure.
But then I got knocked down again. So I went to the gym and I saw the zero. And I was like, oh, I should be able to do that. I've been, doing all these squats and, lifting. But I got on that zero, couldn't do the first move because I actually couldn't lift my arms above my head because of my pecs being cut.
I was going to say the pecs being cut.
Yep.
Everyone just cringed and put their hands on their chests that are listening. I swear to God, every time that we talk about pecs being cut, that's exactly what everyone does. So try not to drive off the road, people. Keep your hands on the wheel.
So my pecs they to this day still hurt. And even when I was in residency, sometimes they contract and I hold my chest like I'm having a heart attack. And people ask me do we take it to the ED? Are you having a heart attack? I'm like, no, it's just my pecs.
Just my pecs.
Did some push-ups yesterday, feeling it. But yeah, so I tried the zero, couldn't do it. So I went to the sport climbing walls and I traversed. And, I spent about 15 minutes in the gym and I left. Mm-hmm. And they were like, you're done? And I said, yeah, this is all I can handle. And emotionally, that was extremely hard on me. Okay. Because I was, kind of seen as the strong climber in the gym. And now here I was, couldn't even, hang on to a jug anymore. And I actually shifted. It was kind of a dark time. And I'm very grateful that all my friends and the Cleveland Rock Gym people all stayed with me because I kind of refused to see anyone. I only went to the gym right when it opened at noon so I could see no one, go in and do my 15 to 30 minute traverse, not 15 to 30 minutes at one time,
right.
Just being at the gym there for 30 minutes. And I slowly kind of made some new friends that were at the noon crew. But I refused to see all my old friends, and some were upset, but I apologized and they took me back, thankfully. But that's just kind of how I dealt with it because I didn't think they could understand the new Favia, and because I thought they kind of saw the dead Favia. Mm-hmm. And it probably took me a good year to be able to climb with my friends again. But so it was probably about a year before I kind of felt like I could do this. For the other previous year of just trying to climb B0, it did not feel all that hopeful.
Now, was that internalized mostly, or did you get vibe from these people about oh, she's not as good a climber anymore or anything like that?
I mean, it was completely internalized.
Okay.
It was me. I mean, there were people would say hey, Favia, why don't you jump on this thing that you would have enjoyed,
Sure.
Not thinking that I couldn't do it.
Right.
But, it wasn't, they weren't trying to be mean or spiteful. And they were totally understanding when I said, I'm not there yet. It was a very, now in retrospect, I'm that was very silly of me. I should not have pushed away all my closest friends.
Okay.
But I did. But,
it's such this, while you're saying that, it's such this paradigm in climbing to push each other, and to not take excuses, so I can kind of understand why they may have made those mistakes of pushing you too far, because it's kind of all we ever do, talk each other up, oh, right. I can't climb that. Sure you can, it's that's all we do all the time. So I can only imagine that, maybe they definitely made those mistakes a little bit with not understanding quite how, far or what you'd gone through, basically.
Yeah. So it was, and I wasn't in a mental state then to really explain it very well.
Right.
I mean, I think if I had communicated better and explained like what I was going through instead of just like, no, I can't hang out, it would have been better on all counts. But it took about a year for me to be able to go back to my circle of friends and climb with them. I mean, I wasn't where I was previously, but I was working towards it. And that's when I started getting more regimented in my training because I was determined to get back to where I was as fast as I possibly could. And the only way I knew about that was to be very dedicated to training. And, after about a year and a half, I was able to climb the problems that I couldn't climb pre-cancer. And I was like, whoa, like, I'm better than I was before, despite all the things I've been through. Training works. And that changed my life too. And that's why I'm so into training, because I saw pretty much a miraculous turnaround.
Right. Like, it's a hell of an endorsement. I mean, I can only imagine, you said something about when you were at Harvard, all the things you were doing taught you how to manage time. But I can only imagine that you drew in on being a collegiate athlete and the training that you learned, just the methods, if not, specific to climbing, but how to be regimented, how to measure growth, how to be smart, those sorts of things. Yeah. So you were like pre-prepared for a bit of that as well.
Yeah. Pre-prepared, definitely.
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions here. I want to finish up with this. But one more question. You mentioned this idea of the death of the previous Favia is really fascinating to me, and you just brought it up again. Let me talk about the differences. Well, what is you're sitting here now? You obviously have a lot of these connections to who you were before that. But what do you think the major differences are?
I mean,
thought about that?
I kind of have. I've never really tried to put it in words. I mean, the answer physically is very obvious because I have to be way, way more careful now. The chemo messed up my ability to recover, just from cuts. Like if I can't get flappers. If I get a flapper, it'll be a hole in my skin for 3 weeks or more because my skin just doesn't turn over very fast, which is a consequence. And
wait till you're 50.
And,
your paper thin skin, help me. Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
I still to this day struggle with walking because of where the port was, and I have so much scar tissue there that I walking still hard. And if I don't get the right amount of sleep at the right time, it's not even the number of hours, but it has to be during a certain period at the night, I get infections. So I've been, in and out of the hospital in residency. I've had surgeries in residency for infections. So physically, even though I was sickly before, I'm definitely more sickly now. But mentally,
okay, so let's talk about the headspace. That's the interesting realm of the Enormocast.
So I am way more determined now than I was before.
Good Lord.
Because I saw that if you make a plan, you think about your plan and you follow steps, it just works so well. And I mean, it's worked so well in my past. And, I know things just pop up, but if you can try to plan for those things popping up, then you can have plan A and plan B and plan C. And so that's just kind of how I see my life now.
Right.
And I don't really think of anything as something I can't achieve. It's just trying to figure out what I can do to get there. And that's kind of how I approach my life now. And in some ways I'm a little bit tougher, and in some ways I'm a little more sensitive. So some things kind of will more easily hit make me cry, to be
Sure.
honest. If you hit one of the weaker spots. But now I kind of feel like, I've overcome probably the hardest thing that I thought something harder than I ever thought I would have to overcome at a young age. Like we all think like, oh, we'll get cancer when we're older. We'll face death when we're older. But facing it at 24 changed my whole life perspective. And it also made me realize that you should live every day like it's going to be your last, or live it like not maybe your last, but live it like tomorrow you might get a devastating diagnosis that's going to change everything. So you better do everything today and don't put it off. And that's why I live like 18 hours every day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really cool because, there's this idea, which is, I think, a pretty simple idea that we are losing as a society, is that you have no idea what a person has been through or is going through. So it's appropriate to treat them, even if they're being, annoying, or they're being, pushy, or it's like, you don't know where that's coming from, and it's hard to do. It's a hard philosophy to live by, right? If someone's pushing your buttons and pissing you off, it's hard to step back and go, well, maybe, she's had this really hard life, or maybe this guy is dealing with something, so I have to be the Zen master and be cool. Hard to do, but we all understand how important it is. And I think that you obviously now have a great and enjoyable life as it is, but there's no way I would look at you and in the very surface way that I've been able to get to know you and think that you had been through so much of that, and it just reminds me that you have no idea. I mean, you don't present any sort of of these physical problems. You don't present any darkness that comes from the place that you were. And yeah, so it's just, I'm kind of talking in circles right now, but it's just refreshing, to know that, or to be reminded that people have these pasts that you have no idea about, and they need to be treated with respect, even when it's super hard to do,
Yes. Be gentle.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I pride myself in trying to make people cry on this thing, and I haven't been able to do it yet. So, you're like, you just gave me an opening. Like, there's something there I can find. I can get her. I'll do it before the end of this thing. So, but anyway, we haven't even talked really about climbing. So, if we have time, if you have time to stick around,
I do.
Let's talk a little bit about how that fits into your life. You found it before the illness, maybe a Cliff Notes version of finding it, and then how it fits into your life now that you put so much importance on. It sounds like that as sort of a litmus test of your sort of again, the way you use your body and the way your physical aspects come out.
Yeah, I started climbing, or I discovered climbing through Google, visiting my mom in Nashville, Tennessee one day, Googling things to do in Nashville, and climbing came up, and I liked it. I went one time, and I loved it, actually. So when I started grad school at Columbia, I went to the activities fair, and they had a climbing team membership, like a discount at one of the gyms. And I bought a year membership, only trying it once, like a few weeks earlier. I actually went back, I tried it again, and I didn't like it. So I didn't go for my time at Columbia most of my year there, but I knew I was leaving to start med school. So I calculated how many times I had to go to break even, and it was about like 11 or 12, and I fell in love around session 7, and I haven't looked back.
7, the lucky number 7. All right.
And so now climbing is probably, mentally, it's the biggest part of my life. Time-wise, I wish it was the biggest part of my life. Medicine takes up many, many hours. Right. But I am solely concentrated on climbing. When I wake up, I run through my project in my head. When I go to sleep, I run through my project in my head. At work, if I'm daydreaming, running through the project in my head, planning my training schedule. So my whole, mental capacity right now is pretty overwhelmed with just thinking how can I climb better? When can I climb next? It's like climbing.
Yeah. Well, and not, it's like you're obviously involved a tremendous amount in dealing with this pandemic. I mean, you're at a hospital that's hammered. You mentioned the last time we talked that it's at least a 4-state area that comes into your hospital, including the Navajo lands, which have been hit really hard by COVID.
Yes.
And so I mean, it's wild that you've got this brain that has a space still for climbing, because I think a lot of people that are as sort of busy with as you are and overwhelmed maybe at times by the pandemic and by what's going on, because you're right in that. It's great that you've got this little voice in there that's just like climb.
Yeah, my brain's pretty funny.
Yeah, no.
This is like,
I mean, it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary is what it is. Yeah, and you're primarily a boulderer.
Yes, a roof boulderer.
Roof boulderer. That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, roof boulderer specifically. It's very, there's like 4 people listening that are like, oh, that's what I do. You guys have a meetup. So because you mentioned falling, maybe again, the same reasons that walking is difficult, falling and landing even on a pad on your feet is pretty hard.
Yes, that's probably more to a genetic disease that I most likely have. I'm still waiting for my genetic results, but clinical exam wise, I fit all the criteria for it. It's called Ehlers-Danlos, and so your ligaments are really loose, and so when you fall, you dislocate.
Okay.
And so that is why I can't take falls. It's not like, it doesn't matter how good the landing is, because I just can't take impact. I can land straight on my back, no problems. But I can't land on my feet. Okay.
So if someone is spotting you,
it has to be a catch.
Yeah, there has to be warned that the whole like grab them and put them on their feet thing is out. Yeah, that's kind of tricky. Yeah. You got to be careful of those really good spotters, because that's their game.
Yeah, I have to. I'm currently doing some new exercises that seem to be kind of helping with the impact. Cool. But right now, most of the time, if I do try something taller that I may fall on, I have spotters who are fully aware of you are catching me midair and then putting me on the ground. So if I can't really climb like with new people too much, like I have to kind of like explain to them.
Sure. That's kind of what I was getting at, I think.
Yeah. Like this is not like, don't push me to the pad. Don't just like help me come down. Is a full on catch me anywhere you can catch me.
I can't tell. Are you generally small? Like, how tall are you?
Yeah. I'm small. I'm 5'2".
Okay. All right. Honestly, like, I couldn't tell one way or the other.
I'm a little dense.
You're like holding lots of cats. I don't know if those cats are giant cats or are they small cats or.
No, I'm a small person, which makes it a lot easier.
Right.
Some of my climbing partners like 6'2" men, and so they just pluck me out of the air.
Snatch you, gently onto the ground. Perfect. Well, cool. I what do you think? I ask this a lot, but what do you think? What do you think it is about climbing? Of all the things you've done in your life that makes it so persistent. At least at this time, just this persistent voice in your head that draws you to it. It's sort of a mystery. I think this podcast has been attempting to unravel for 200 and some episodes of what the jumper cables are that gets us so damn into this thing.
I wish I had a good answer for you, because I think about that almost every day. Like, why do I enjoy straining on my fingertips? Mm-hmm. Why is that so much fun? I think part of it is the problem solving. I've enjoyed puzzles my whole life, and climbing is sort of a puzzle because you just have to figure it out. And, with the micro betas or with, just getting stronger. I enjoy that aspect. And I think it lends towards my natural abilities. Mm-hmm. I was always stronger in my upper body versus my lower body in track. It made no sense. So I think it's just a mixture of the problem solving, and I like using, my upper body, and the community is also great. I mean, that's kind of what keeps you there, is having, all these people who are also equally addicted to this strange thing. And you have your own lingo, your own little world. I just enjoy meeting new people who share the same passion.
Yeah,
So,
it truly is like this, the if you have to ask, you don't understand kind of group, because I've rarely met a climber who could really, not struggle to explain why they're into it. And so when you're around a whole bunch of other people that can't explain it, it is refreshing. And, regardless of the type of climbing, we've all been at the family gatherings or the dinner parties or whatever, trying to explain it to somebody and stumbling over. And I've always joked that bouldering is probably the hardest thing to explain. Like, you don't use the ropes. There's no top. Like, why don't you just walk up the other side? Like, like it's truly like the most esoteric version, I think, of what we do. A lot of people understand from like Everest.
right.
They can like go down the ladder to rock climbing, to getting to the top and conquering this or that. But the bouldering thing, traverse bouldering, sit starts, like you're getting into like totally crazy time, and you don't need to talk about it with the people who do it, like why you do it. I like force people to talk about it, and they get all uncomfortable.
Yeah,
So,
I actually think about that question a lot,
mhm.
but I haven't come up with, I don't know why.
Right,
Just
right.
don't know.
No, okay, that's fine. That's a good enough answer. And you like, each time someone is forced to try on this show, they drop a little. There's a little bit into the puzzle, even if they can't just like flat out explain what the deal is. So, is there anything we haven't covered that you wanted to get to?
Maybe Ninja Warrior?
Oh, shiza, I forgot all about Ninja frickin' Warrior. Okay, we're talking about Ninja Warrior. That's right, you're a Ninja Warrior.
Yeah, I competed on Ninja Warrior for seasons 10 and season 11. It was quite the experience.
What years were this? How long ago was this?
Last year and the year before
Okay,
last year.
okay, so this
2000
is super recent. Yeah.
Yeah, 18 and 19.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I competed on the first year with a kidney infection.
Of course you did.
I was like in the hospital on Friday, and my flight was Friday night, and I was like, I have 8 hours before I'm getting on a flight to compete on American Ninja Warrior. You
That's
have to give
awesome.
me this drug and this drug. I need this drug PO.
All right. I'm sure that makes me, as an aside, like doctors treating other doctors must be a nightmare.
Well, sometimes a nightmare, but sometimes it's really simple, because I was
Right,
just
right,
like, I
right.
know what I need, just give it to me.
Right.
So that was like, I was like, of course I come down with this, infection that's serious that you're supposed to be hospitalized for.
Mhm.
And I'm supposed to compete. But, so like, that's one way that cancer actually primed me. I was like, well, this isn't cancer.
Mhm.
I can perform with 102 fever. That's no problem.
Right.
But ninja was definitely an interesting part in my life. The obstacles are very scary, and they make rock climbing seem super safe. But the community there, again, is fantastic. Like, on my first time competing, some of the big stars saw me practicing in the back, and they're like, you look absolutely terrified. Like, you're not just like afraid because of being on TV, because I actually kind of enjoy spotlights and stuff. It makes me perform better.
Yeah, like
They're
from
like,
back when you were running.
Right, exactly.
Right, okay.
But they're like, you're genuinely afraid of the obstacles. I was like, yes, I am. And that is why NPC nicknamed me Dr. Scream.
This is all available on YouTube, by the way. So if anybody wants to just Google or just search YouTube, it's all there, the screaming and everything. Yeah.
So I'm retired now from Ninja because
Okay.
I herniated my disc competing in 2019.
Okay.
And so it just kind of, the risk reward benefit wasn't quite there. So, but those were definitely 2 years of my life that were unique experiences.
And you're doing that, working at the hospital full time. It was just another thing you dropped in,
Yep.
and found time to do.
Yes, I would actually work like from 8 until 7 go to the ninja gym from 7 to 9 and then go back to the hospital from like 9 to 11 or 11:30. And then that was like my schedule for a bit.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then you're probably trying to rock climb too. And I can imagine like when you're talking about herniating your disc and what we had spoken about before, yeah, because they end up hitting the pads and things at really weird angles. And it sounds like, yeah, it was kind of destined to be a short career for you.
Yes, there's a lot of parkour,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, running and against hard objects.
Right.
And that it was super, super hard on my back.
Right.
And I mean, I was in tremendous pain for a long time before I even herniated the disc.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to learn how to do these obstacles. So that's why I'm, retired now and solely focusing on climbing.
Okay. Awesome. Well, it's just, I feel like it's a matter of if I got back with you a year from now, you'd have another thing that you did that, normal people don't do. So it's awesome. But also you'd have been like, and also I had this other infection while I was, outperforming you. But, how's your boxing? Did you keep up? Did you keep up with your boxing?
No.
Okay. All right, cool. I think we just blew the mics with that laugh. That's good. Okay, well, those guys will be bummed to hear that back in Cleveland. But it was cool to have you shout out Cleveland. I know some folks up in that climbing community, and it's a strange place to be a climber in terms of distance from climbing. I know someone's gonna be like, no, there's this sweet crag called the Scruffy Buttress down by the river, blah blah blah. I know they do a lot of they do a lot of buildering as well, but it's a cool shout out. Yeah, it's a cool shout out to a very fervent community up there where you were when this all was kind of going down. And I don't know if you keep in touch with those folks up there, but they do get out here occasionally. Yeah. Yes,
the Cleveland Rock Gym, which sadly closed last week, is my home gym forever. Mm-hmm. And the owner, Chris Allen, we still talk, and he actually would chemo sit me. So he would come and make sure, because I needed 24/7 care. Right. So he would come and take care of me during the day. He would drive me to the hospital.
Incredible.
So the climbing community there, including the owner of the Cleveland Rock Gym, just fantastic.
Awesome. Well, cool, Favia. Thanks a lot for connecting and coming back to talk to me again after a couple months. And it's just, I can bust on social media all the time, and in the last couple months, it's actually been this place that's really not always been a great place to visit for me, but finding you on there and then leading to talking to you on the run out and then talking here, it's just been this totally awesome gift. And I got to say that I've laughed more on this podcast than I have in a long, long time. So I really appreciate you coming on. And hopefully we had talked about me after the run out. I was like, hey, if I get down to to Albuquerque, let's do the podcast, because it was face-to-face rule, and luckily I've thrown that out, and it's just been liberating. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
I'm glad you had me. I'm glad you were able to do it remotely.
Yeah, and she's holding a cat. We didn't mention 5, is that right?
5 cats and a dog. Yes.
Okay. Did you like cats more or less or the same before the previous?
Oh my goodness.
Before the previous death.
More.
Oh, you liked them more then?
Oh, no, I like them more now.
Okay,
more now. Yeah.
That was going to be my guess.
Yeah.
That was going to be my guess, is that your more sensitive side has now attracted you to felines. Right. Okay,
yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Favia.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, folks, thanks for listening, and thanks to Favia for making that happen. Coming to me from New Mexico. I sent her a mic, but we couldn't get it to work on her computer easily, so we just went with her talking to the computer, which isn't always the best sound, but I think it worked out fine. and I wasn't going to pass up the opportunity to have her on, so we just fired it off and got what we got. And I tell you what, if Favia Dubyk isn't uplifting to you, if her laugh doesn't make you smile, then, man, you need your oil changed. You need your spleen emptied. Isn't it Shakespeare? Something about digesting the venom of the spleen? Yeah, your spleen's full of venom, bro. And a programming note, Favia and I did talk about whether we wanted to chat about diversity, about Black Lives Matter, about her place as a woman of color in climbing, and we actually just kind of mutually agreed that the interview had run its course and there wasn't necessarily a good place for it in there. But luckily, if you do want to find out Favia's views on those things, they've been recorded elsewhere, specifically at the Runout with Andrew and I when I first quote-unquote met Favia. We did an interview over there at the Runout, so you can go and check that out to find out more specifically about her views when the Black Lives Matter protests first started and her experiences as a woman of color in climbing are all laid out there. So we left it to that by choice. Okay, let's get out there and climb with clean spleens now. Clean your spleen out before you go climbing. That's my advice. That's going to be my training book, The Clean Spleen with Chris Kalous. Go climbing with joy, with happiness, just like Favia does. Live like Favia. We're going to change the check you're not thing to just live like Favia. That's the new Enormocast slogan. Can we go with that? But also check you're not.
That will be a huge achievement. Trying to finish off these floating steps. And a yell there, I love it. She's getting viral. Favia. The teachers told me that's where it's at.